What I'm going to do is kind of give you comparisons. I'm going to show you what Cicada looks like, but I'm also going to show you other screenshots of other software in the different modes that you would use it so you can see the difference. And then at the tail end of it here, we're going to actually log in live and use Cicada since they've been gracious enough to provide their software and sponsor the majority of today. We're going to actually do a search and you'll see how it works. And you'll say, oh, that's not that hard. I can do that. This is their basic information of what it is, contact information. If you go on Everything eDiscovery's website to the registration page, you click on their little picture, it'll take you right to them, cicada.com. You can also find it as well. This is eDiscovery Software Review's assessment of it, and Chioma Deer, who spoke earlier today, is one of the reviewers at eDiscovery Software Reviews, and this is the kind of review that you get. This is actually Cicada's review. And the vendors, the software companies, have no control over this. So if they're not good, they don't get a good review. If they're good, they get a good review. But it's by lawyers, for lawyers, and paralegals. There are paralegals that review it, there are lawyers that review it, and they write it in the language that you all can understand because it's coming from your colleagues, essentially. It's not coming from the industry. You look at some other sites, they're going to tell you what the software company wants to pitch you. This is not the pitch, this is the assessment. So when you log into the software, to any eDiscovery software, you're going to land on a project page or a dashboard. And this stuff is a little complex, so it's kind of akin to the Space Shuttle's dashboard there. When you log into Cicada, you get to this basic landing page. This is what it looks like. You go into your project, and it's not just one project. You could have a whole slew of projects and cases going on, and this is where you wind up. And what you're seeing here on the bottom of the screen are, in this particular data set that we're going to look at, which is a test data set, it's all emails. So they're just all loaded in there, and on top is the search box. And that's where you're going to construct your search, and then there's other options there for you. So when we talk about searching, which is generally the first thing that everybody is going to do, Cicada has a particular malleable search that allows you to drill down. It allows you to do things that a lot of other vendors don't offer, which is where you want to know, what does the software company offer? Is it just put in the word and search, or can you create all sorts of different additions? Is it this and this, or this, and in this area of the email, the to, the from? You want the flexibility to construct a sophisticated search if you need to, because if you've got 200,000 documents, wouldn't you rather review the 5 that are specifically responsive as opposed to the 750 just to find those 5? That's what you're doing with this stuff. You're sort of drilling down on it. Now, in comparison, when you get into the search page, this is Digital War Room. This is another software, eDiscovery software provider, and this is what their search area looks like. Similar, but different, right? Just to kind of give you a feel for it. This is Disco that you mentioned earlier out of Texas. This is their search. Again, different, and there's no right or wrong here. It's what works for your case. It's what works for you. K-Cura, which is the purveyor of relativity. This is their search. So you sort of land in there, and you're going to see the email and the search area to do your search. Another one, Next Point. It brings up a little box. Basically, it's doing all the same stuff. It's all ingesting data. It's all figuring out what's in that data, and it's allowing you to search through it and spit it back out on the other end. How it does it, how efficient it is the distinguishing factor, and what your level of comfort is. If you like a pop-up box, that's good. If you don't, if you want simplicity, the other one is better. It depends on what you want. Analytics. Analytics are now built into almost all eDiscovery software. It didn't used to be that way. It used to be an add-on and it cost money. Now most of them, in response to the particular needs of the industry, have said, okay, we'll just add it in. Analytics basically is what is in this data set. What is it made up of? It's that proverbial 30,000-foot view looking at this data overall and saying, what do I have here? What did I just get from my client? And it breaks it down. And a lot of it is visual depending on the software. In Cicada software, and I'll show this to you in a few minutes, they have analytics built right in, and it's on the left side. You hit a button, and if you had a person, for example, Barbara Smith, and you click on the button next to her, what it brings up is a graphic showing you the connections from her to everybody that she had emailed. It's primarily the data set that we're looking at here is all emails. Everybody that she's connected to by email, and it gives you a visual. And then you can click on each one of these little spokes to add to your search, to drill down further. But what the analytics are doing is they're not saying, okay, there's 150,000 documents, you can look through them all, good luck, and figure out what's there. At light speed, the software is digesting what this stuff is. It's making all these connections, and it's creating a visual for you so that you can more easily say, who was she talking to? Because you might be trying to find things. You're sort of looking in the data. Who was she talking to? What are the connections between this person and that person? That's where it's helpful. Now, in comparison, this is what Nuix looks like. This is another software company. That's what their analytics looks like. Advanced data, that's what they give you in the analytical assessment of the data set. Brain space. I'm not going to go through all 900, by the way. Logical. And you see, it's all basically, conceptually, it's all the same. They're giving you this sort of visual representation of what this data set is made up of, but the way that it's presented is different. Graphical overview in Cicada as well. So they've got the little people map with the lines and the spokes on the wheel, but you can also have a graphical overview at the top there of what this data set is composed of. In Cicada, you can also drill down one level further and create a specific analytical assessment of certain portions of the data. So let's say you've got different things going on in the case, and you don't want to look at the whole data set. You just want to look at a little portion of it for a couple of people that are involved for one specific issue. You can create that analysis as one of these boxes and just drill down on that and say, don't look at anything else. Forget about the other 180,000 emails. I just want you to look at these 20,000 that I have kind of segregated from my search. And you can create a little analytical assessment for yourself of that. These tools are very helpful, again, if you have to defend your search or if you have to go in and talk to a judge about costs and proportionality, because you can actually physically demonstrate it. You can say, when we drill down and we cut this thing down to 20,000, this is what we're looking at, yada, yada, yada. Production. What do you think production is? Giving it to opposing, exactly. When we talk about production, we click on the menu, and these are all designed to be user-friendly and to be something that you're comfortable with using just like any other software. So you click on production, it brings up this little dialog box, and you've got a whole host of options. And if you don't know, gee, what does this mean? What does this box mean? Where do you think you go to find out? Connie. Call Connie. When in doubt, call Connie. Any time of the day or night. 3 a.m., she'll get the phone. Ultimately, what you get with this software, with Cicada, is this output. And it tells you when it's ready. And like we looked at earlier, it gives you the ability to share directly from the software, which so far, this is the only software that I've seen in looking at a lot of them that has that share capability built in. But it gives you any number of production. You don't just have to do one production. You could do different sets. You could do productions of certain tags, production of certain pieces of data, production to an expert, production back to your client for review or discussion, production to the other side. You have a lot of flexibility with this stuff, more so than you really ever did with the paper documents because of the unique flexibility of this digital data. And we looked at this morning, this portion of it, this cost calculator. This, as far as I've seen or been able to determine, and I think Connie has indicated this to me, that nobody else has a cost calculator yet built in, which if you're just doing a straight search and you don't have a huge volume of data, it might not be that critical for you. But it's nice to have it. There's no extra cost, it's built in. But if you get into a case where suddenly this data starts to mushroom and it balloons and you're talking about the costs, you're going to want to have this handy not only to discuss with your client, but also with the court in terms of the proportionality and cost shifting. And you can show real data that a judge can base his or her decision and ruling on. So very useful for hint, hint, cost shifting. This is the management section. This is very helpful for managing paralegals and experts. More often, I would probably gather, depending on the firm, a lot of firms are going to say, well, that's discovery, that's in the realm of the paralegal. And they're going to put it on the paralegal's shoulders. This section, if paralegals go in and do the actual search in the data, this management section allows whomever is supervising them in that scenario to kind of virtually look over their shoulder and see what they're doing and how much of the task that was assigned they've accomplished. It's also good for experts, because if you're going to send a portion of the data to your expert to review, you can track and see, did they do it? Did they actually look at this stuff that you told them to look at in advance of their deposition and things like that? And it's not just for people in your own office. Again, there's no saying that you wouldn't have co-counsel that's out of state, even out of the country. You can share this stuff with them, and it allows you to manage the reviewers. What if you're involved with co-counsel that has 17 different offices, and they've got people all over the country doing the reviews? You can actually sort of stand above them virtually and make sure that they're doing the assigned tasks and see what's going on. You might not use it in every case, but it's nice to have these tools, especially if you're not paying extra for them. This would be the graphical overview of the assigned reviewers in Cicada. So this is showing you a person who you assign specific work to. This is giving you their little box, their little screenshot of what they've done and what they are actually doing. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to read you this very short fake case. But I have to preface this by telling you that you're going to hear names that you know and that you are familiar with, like Jeb Bush and Terry Schiavo. The case has absolutely nothing to do with those people. It's just simply that the sample data set that we have that is uploaded into Cicada software for us to use and that they use in demonstrating the software and things happens to be this bunch of emails that deals with Governor Bush, Terry Schiavo, and everything like that. But the case that I've constructed around it has nothing to do with the real facts. So just pretend like they're just random names. Otherwise, nothing would make sense. Now, one banker's box, everybody remembers the banker's boxes, right? One banker's box is roughly equivalent to 3,000 pages of documents. If you fill that to capacity, it can hold 3,000 pages. The data set that we're going to work in just a minute that Cicada has provided for us is 24.76 gigabytes. Okay, that means absolutely nothing, right? It is composed of 767,912 individual documents. And then you go, wow, okay, that sounds like a lot, but I still can't picture it. I can't wrap my mind around it. That amount, 767,000 documents and change, is equivalent to 1.4 million pages if you printed it all out, if you had that much paper. So if you divide 1.4 million pages by 3,000 per banker's box, you get 466 banker's boxes. That's probably enough to just about fill the room, I think. So that's what we're going to be working with. If you kind of envision banker's boxes stacked floor to ceiling taking up this whole room, it'll give you an idea of the power and the speed of this. You have been retained by Jeb Bush, a member in a Florida LLC called JAF International. Mr. Bush has been sued by another member, Terry Schiavo, for breach of fiduciary duty and breach of their operating agreement. You and your firm have a good reputation in the local legal community, but you've never been involved in eDiscovery. The managers in your firm just read on your Facebook page that you attended this eDiscovery CLE and assigned you to head up the eDiscovery effort, manage Mr. Bush's data, and respond to the plaintiff's first request to produce that was served together with the suit. The plaintiff has asked for all emails of Mr. Bush's discussions with one Xavier Cortada over the past 12 months relating to expediting spaceport license approvals. The judge has a standing order requiring each party to undertake an initial good faith collection and assessment of their client's data, and then to meet and discuss search terms and efficient conduct in eDiscovery. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Her order also states that she will levy severe sanctions for eDiscovery violations, including but not limited to requiring the offending attorney to stand outside the courthouse with a sign stating, quote, "Don't ask me about eDiscovery because I don't know much about it." So here's the factual background before we get into the search, and it's a short one. You don't have to write anything down. On May 5th, 1961, astronaut Al Shepard became the first American into space, touching off a space race between the U.S. and the USSR. During the early years of this space race, the common belief was that civilians would be able to travel to lunar bases by the 1980s. Boy, were they wrong. Although this desire for open access to spaceflight never came into being, it found private sector support in the early 2000s with the Ansari X Prize. In response to and to regulate civilian space travel, Congress enacted the Commercial Space Launch Amendments Act of 2004, vesting regulatory responsibility with the FAA. Florida's legislature then updated Section 330.30 to incorporate a regulatory framework for licensing and operating a private spaceport in Florida. And applications are in the back if you'd like to license your own home into a spaceport. 2 years ago, Jeb Bush and Terry Schiavo organized JAF International in Tallahassee under the revised LLC Act. Their operating agreement made them equal members, and their stated purpose was to guide and assist private citizens in licensing and developing spaceports to bring more aerospace companies into the state. According to her complaint, Ms. Schiavo learned that Mr. Bush was developing or had developed a spaceport near Miami, which she alleged was a breach of the non-compete provision in their operating agreement, breached his fiduciary duties to the company, and stole opportunities of the company. She also alleged that Mr. Bush emailed a competitor in the aerospace industry in Miami named Xavier Cortada, representing that he could use his political influence as a former Republican presidential candidate with Congress in Washington to expedite spaceport license approvals. Your assignment is that you used eDiscovery Services, a forensic collection company based in Miami, to help you collect all your clients' data from various devices to be sure that you ethically complied with all the obligations. You uploaded 24.76 gigabytes to Cicada's secure servers and are now ready to make an assessment of the data for the upcoming discussion with the plaintiff's attorney that the judge requires, and to prepare to respond to their first request to produce. So some of the words on here that I've highlighted are what we're going to consider in keywords. And again, these are random keywords based on the data set. It has nothing to do with the real people. But Bush, Schiavo, Xavier Cortada, JF International, etc. So what I'm going to do now is go back to the laptop, log in, and walk you through this live in person. What you're seeing here is the actual login page for Cicada. We're at cicada.com, so we're going to log in. It might be a little slow because of the internet connection, because I'm bouncing it off my phone here. Okay. So what we have is everything eDiscovery emails demonstration. That's our little project that has been set up for us. And here we are. You saw this screenshot before. This is our kind of dashboard or landing page for the actual search. So we're going to go into the search. Now we know that what we have to look for first to respond to this first request to produce are the emails between Jeb Bush and Mr. Cortada. So let's start out with that and say, here are our options. We could search the text, we can search fields, we can search tags. We're going to go to the field. And we're going to put the from field. So we scroll down and we find the from field, the from in the email. And we don't want to say equals because that's too limiting. So we want to say it contains. And let's put in Bush, or Jeb Bush, and we'll hit search. Now you see what happened up here at the top? It says from contains Bush. So that's that from field. So now we're going to add to this search to build our search criteria. But we don't want the from, we want the to, because we know that they're asking for emails from Jeb Bush to Xavier Cortada. So let's put in Cortada in the to field. Now you see what just happened at the bottom? We had 767,000 documents in this data set. Now, because we searched for the very specific emails between those two people, how many are there? 6. We just cut out 99.999% of all the non-relevant emails, and we narrowed this thing down, and instead of reviewing hundreds of thousands of emails, we can just look at 6 specific emails. So now what we want to do, and this is a critical step in any eDiscovery software, is we want to save our search. Every software is going to require that you do that. So let's just put today's date, and we'll save our search so that we can come back to it as need be later. Now we've got those 6 documents. So we're going to look at these documents. So we would just click on it, and this is the actual email. This is one of the 6. On the right-hand side, we can sort of turn these things on and off, these different options. But the tag option, and if you hover over it, it tells you it's tagging. Tagging is like putting a little Post-it note on it. So we'd say, okay, here's all these other tags from other people using the demo set and things like that. We don't want any of these. We want to make our own tag. So let's make a tag for everything eDiscovery. So we go into the settings, and we're in the tags. So we're going to add everything eDiscovery as a tag. And there it is, but we don't like the gray. The gray is a little bit too muted, so let's change the color of our tag to red. We don't have to worry about the redactions for this, but that's our tag. So we go back to the search. We've made this everything eDiscovery tag that we're going to use. Fortunately, we were smart enough to save our search. So now we can go back into it, and now we've got these 6 documents. So let's just randomly tag. We don't really care what's in them because there's nothing that's going to come back on this little fake assignment. So we'll just kind of assume that these are the responsive documents out of the data set. So let's tag it. Now you could go back to the search, or you can just click the next button and it takes you to the next email. So let's just randomly click the first 4 out of the 6. And we'll tag those. So we're not tagging 5 and 6 because for whatever reason they're not relevant. Now we want to save this. As you can see, we go back in it, it's still tagged. So it's all set there for us. You see how some of these words are highlighted? The software will allow you to highlight certain specific terms if you set that up. So we could go into the settings and we could go to keywords. And we can create a new grouping of keywords, or we can look at the one that's already created to save a little bit of time here. And I've already put Bush and Cortada as the keywords in this little keyword group so that when we open the emails, it'll be highlighted for us and it's a lot easier to find. And if we go back to our search and we look at the first one, we open it up, now we've got Bush and Cortada highlighted. We can change the color, we can highlight certain terms, so if we want to make it easier on ourselves to find these things. So now we've found 4 out of the 6. For whatever reason, we don't really care about 5 and 6. So what we want to do is go back to search, but we don't want to go into the original search because we're going to get all 6 documents. We only want those 4 that we tagged. So we create a new search, and instead of text, fields, analytics, we go to tags, and we say, ooh, tags, that's neat, that's what we want. And here is everything eDiscovery, the tag with 4. We hit search, and there's our 4 documents. Now we're getting ready to produce. So we've narrowed the 6 down to 4. We want to save this again, and we'll save this as everything eDiscovery tag. So that's our actual search of just those 4 documents. Now we're ready to produce because those are the 4 that are responsive to the first request to produce. So we go to the Production tab at the top. And I've created this so that we don't have to spend time, additional time with it. But you would create a new request. It takes time for the software to assemble the stuff, and we don't want to wait around for it. But we have a new production, and it's going to say select search. So what's the search? We want the EE tag. That's just those 4 documents that we sort of carved out of the whole grouping. We can Bates number it however we want. We can have plaintiff or defendant or anything that we want to put into the Bates number. We can start the numbering at 1. We could pick up the numbering at 100, wherever we were. And the production format is going to give us options. PDF with embedded text, black and white TIFF, black and white plus color JPEGs. So let's go with the PDF with the embedded text. We don't really have to redact anything, but if we wanted to redact stuff, we would hit the redaction, and whatever we marked previously to be redacted would be redacted from the document. Including text is you can OCR if the data set allows for it, if it's in the original format. Placeholders are something that you would put into the set. So if you tag certain things responsive to request number 4, you could stick a placeholder document in there that is going to say request number 4, and it's going to hold that place for just those documents. So when you produce the set, it's produced in these little groupings, the documents responsive to request number 1, the ones responsive to request number 2, et cetera, et cetera. This also gives you the option for endorsements. What are endorsements? Endorsements would be terms that you would put on the document itself, like confidential. It could be subject to clawback or anything like that that would be appropriate in the case, and you can create little rules for it. If it is tagged with everything eDiscovery, then put confidential on the document, and you can place a watermark on those documents to do that. Include the natives, of course, would be the native of the documents, only for placeholders, for documents, and then the load file, if you needed a load file. And once you're all done with this and you've chosen what you want, then you would hit produce, and there it is. What it's doing is it is actually going through and packing those up and producing it. Now, I've already done this in advance of today to save us some time, so we can look at what this is and show how it comes. If we want to download it, we're going to download this. It comes to us as a zip file. And then if you open up that zip file, it's going to have the actual production documents in there with their Bates numbers and all the extra stuff, the endorsements or anything that you put on it. So let's go back for a second and look at what we were looking at earlier with these names and these analytics. We expand out this little bar on the left, and we want to go into the analytics. So let's look at the people. When we click on the tiny little icon there, we bring up this whole list, and it gives you the analytics for this grouping of 4 documents. So if we want to say, well, let's go with people because we're talking about this Xavier Cortada guy. If we click on that, it brings up the documents. But if we click on this little icon here, Now, here we go. Now we're into the graphical representation of who Xavier Cortada was talking to within this group of 6 documents. We're using a very, very small data set here because it'll take us too much time. But you can envision if you had 50,000 documents, you could see over a period of whatever you set it for, 18 months, 2 years, whatever, you would see who he was talking to. And then if you start clicking on these little boxes in the middle, if you hover over it, it gives you the specifics of it. If you click on it, you can add it directly into your search. It gives you a lot of flexibility in that regard. So now we want to kind of go back for a second. And I want to go back into the original data set. The whole data set. And I'm just going to cancel these out. So what we're looking at here, you see on the bottom here that I'm hovering the cursor over, it's 767,912 documents. Not the pages, it's separate documents in there. This is the entire data set that we're looking at. So if we want to kind of look at what we're working with here, because we know some of the other concepts and we want to prepare for that meet and greet, let's see what happens if we search in the text and we put in the terms. Remember, the accusation in the complaint was that Jeb Bush could use his influence as a former Republican candidate for president to influence Congress in Washington. So let's use those words and watch what happens to the 767,000 documents when we search in the text. We'll put in Republican first. And now it went from 767,000 to 21,972. So just putting that into the text, we've now cut that thing down substantially. So let's go to candidate. When we search for candidate, and you'll notice at the top here, it's building a search for us. In the text, it is searching Republican and candidate. If we wanted to say Republican or candidate, we could click this little and see it now it changes to or. We have that kind of flexibility. So we'll change it back to and. Now we've got 1,336 documents instead of the 21,000. So we're going to even go further because he said he could use his influence with Congress. Remember, we have 1,336. Now we're down to 220. We're compressing this data as we're drilling down further and further using these terms. When we go to Washington then, now we're down to 82. A lot better than 767,000. We have just used random search terms based on the story of the case or the information in the complaint to significantly reduce down what we have to look at. Now, if we wanted to do a managed review of this, like we talked about earlier, we would create a new managed review, and we could just say eDiscovery to name it. And this gives us the ability to create that managed review. We can set all types of criteria. We can set where things will be reviewed, what tags will be used, whether it's available or not to use that tag, and we can limit what the reviewer is actually going to see. So if you have an expert witness and you don't want that expert to look at 767,000 documents because some of it is stuff that the expert shouldn't see because they can be asked about it, it might be privileged or protected information, you can limit what the expert can actually see and still let them look in the data set, which is useful. Especially if you have other people working on different projects searching in the data set, you can leverage that to your advantage. So if we go to the Analyze page, we'll make a new analysis here. And let's just call it eDiscovery CLE. And if we create that, now we're looking at the entirety of the data set in this analysis. If we wanted to limit this down, these options, these search options of filter and request and document set, the filter is going to remove certain documents. So if we added a filter of the search we just did, you can see that what happened is this changed from 767,912, the filtered documents, it took it out. It took out those 6 documents that we found. So now it's just 767,906. So now we're looking at the whole data set, but we've eliminated the ones that we found. Now, if we don't want to do that, if we want to do it the opposite way, we can kind of get rid of that. And we can put that into the request. Now the requested documents have been separated out, and they're in this little area in the bottom of the 6 documents. Obviously, if you had a larger amount that you're working with, it's going to be easier to see. We're just dealing with 6 documents for simplicity here today. Your cost profile is here, where you can put in all information about the reviewer, who they are, the volume that they're going to do, the costing of it, the profile of what you're going to estimate that they're going to do, the number of hours, the cost, things like that, and the production profile gives you all this flexibility. And if you don't know how to use it, you just call Connie. And that's an easy way to do it. Let me just log out of here and close out. Now we looked at, just to review, we looked at a search, we looked at analysis, we looked at manage review. Reporting would just be what you think it is, it's reporting. And then of course the production. Are there any questions? Based on any of that, anybody have any questions? Yes, ma'am. Let me just make my way back up to the front here. Oh, I'm sorry, Bob. I didn't see it back there. Okay, yes. Yes, sir.
Sort of skipped over redactions or something. That's a big issue with a lot of the productions that I am doing, is that redact the additional guilty parties.
Yes.
So that takes as long as doing the review. So are there ways to go into the software and say, like in emails, that I'm happy to put Mr. Cortada, but I want everybody else redacted out of that?
Yes, and for that type of, the question that you posed is, if you go in this example with Cortada, could you somehow go into those emails and say, I want you to redact out the other email addresses or redact things out of it? The best thing to do is call Connie, and she would walk you through it, but generally the redactions, you can set parameters for redactions and say, redact everything but Cortada. The software has to have flexibility for it to work in cases. Otherwise, it would be of no value. So yes, you can do that. Any other questions from anyone? Okay. Well, everything that you need is on everythingediscovery.com, and I want to thank you for your time today and for watching the whole presentation. I know it's a long day for all of you, and hope people on the video enjoy it.